Boston outsmarted them in certain areas of the game, and they did outplay them. All those rumors and everything aside, I don't know what happened to LeBron there late. I don't know if again, and the shoulder or the elbow or whatever it was, and all the the things that the wear and tear and everything else. And I think there's a part of LeBron that realized when they got into that series with Boston, I think he took a step back and went, we're in deep trouble. Because I think he was frustrated with Mike. I think he was frustrated knowing that Shaq wasn't the same player. I think he realized that Hickson wasn't going to get as much playing time as he wanted. And I think he knew that Delonte and Mo were not the same players, and they could not guard Rajon Rondo. Nobody on that team in the playoffs could guard Rajon Rondo. And by the time they figured out any way to do that, it was too late.
Monday, we did the show from the Browns Foundation golf outing at Firestone, and met Sheldon Brown for the first time.
Right.
Boy, was I impressed.
Good kid.
Natural leader. Fujita from the Super Bowl,
From the Saints.
New Orleans Saints. Man, oh man, was I impressed.
Linebacker.
Another natural leader. We know Delhomme. We covered his press conference. You were out there. Natural leader. Could it be that they could contend? Roethlisberger's going to miss several games. I mean, NFL always has surprise teams that do well and surprise teams that we're supposed to that don't do well.
I think that the thing about the Browns that concerns me still is that the lack of playmakers. And what I mean by that, of course, is that, on the offensive side of the ball, Josh Cribbs is probably the playmaker. But how many times will he really touch the football? The one position that really has started to worry me, and we were talking about this again downstairs today, was, you remember a couple years ago when Butch Davis was here that Kelly Holcomb had that monster game in the playoffs against Pittsburgh. And because of that, he was anointed as the next, the big quarterback the next year and everything else. Are we not doing that same thing with Jerome Harrison? After he had that big year with Kansas, a game against Kansas City last year?
But haven't they covered their tracks certainly we didn't get a full gauge on Davis because he got hurt so early.
Right, of course.
They pick up this kid Hardesty from Tennessee. Yep. Haven't they covered that Jennings is still
Chris
there?
Jennings, right.
Hillis plays the other position, but he also can serve.
He can carry the ball, though.
Yes,
yeah.
He can carry the ball. Haven't they covered their tracks?
I think that's a good point, but I think that there's a lot of focus on Jerome being the number one back. I mean, you always want to have a number one guy, and I think that they think Jerome is going to be that guy.
But is he a feature every down back,
I don't think
Matt?
so. I don't think
either.
he is. I really don't. And I hope from the coaching standpoint, because it is the same coaching as last year, that they don't relook at that Kansas City game over and over and say to themselves, this is it. This is the guy we got to have. Because I think you got to run the ball in this division. I think if Jake Delhomme's going to throw the ball 25, 30 times a game, they're not going to be very effective.
Here's my biggest concern, and I want you to comment on it. Dable. Now, we've got Holmgren at the top.
Right.
Who was an offensively oriented coach big
Seattle,
time.
in Green Bay.
He knows we've got to run the ball, but his forte is quarterbacks and throwing
West Coast offense, sure.
He brought in a backup in case Delhomme struggles like he did a year ago at Carolina, and the likes of Seneca Wallace, who he bragged about, wait till you see this guy throw the ball, and he can do so many other things besides run. So, Dable. Play calling, creativity, do the unexpected. Are we going to see a more diversified offensive scheme at least?
I hope so. Because the thing that you're going to have on this team is, first of all, the biggest questions offensively is what you said earlier. Can Jake Delhomme step up and overcome what happened in Arizona the last 2 years? Really last year, because he just did not. He said himself, he said it at the press conference we were at and everything else, that he knew he didn't play well. If he doesn't play well, can Seneca Wallace come in and throw the ball like he does in certain parts of certain games when he was in Seattle? Can the wide receivers step up? Brian Robrisky looked great over the course of this minicamp, but at the same time, everybody looks great when they're going up against each other with no pads and they're out there just running around and it's nice summer day and everything like that. Can he step up when it's really called upon? Can Muhammad Massaquoi continue to develop as a wide receiver? Tight end, what are they going to do there? I mean, there's a lot of question marks. As far as a diversified offense, I think there's going to be points where Dable's going to have to realize that the more times you get the ball in the hands of Josh Cribbs, the better. I mean, I go back to the Pittsburgh game they won late in the season. It wasn't exactly an offensive showcase because it was, minus 20 degrees or whatever. But Josh Cribbs, every time he touched the ball that night, there was a sense of, at least from the Pittsburgh side, because they couldn't stop the kid. And I think that as long as you don't get him to a point where you're going to hurt him, I think that if you give him the ball enough, I think that they're going to have an opportunity to score some points. But again, it comes down to offensive line protection. Does Jake Delhomme have it in him to not make mistakes like he did last year? And can this wide receiver core, with Robisky and Massaquoi and a couple other young guys step up? Because I think that that's a concern when you don't have a go-to guy. I mean, Jake Delhomme, when he was in Carolina, at least had Steve Smith and he had Mushin Muhammad. He doesn't really have that type of guy here that I think he trusts yet. I don't know if that'll be Robisky. I don't know if it'll even be Cribbs, but I think there's got to be a guy that's going to step up and make some plays in those third and fourth quarters of games.
2 more questions. I'll let you run. I mentioned to Coach Mangini when I had him on the other day that since I've been in Cleveland, we haven't had a tenacious, ferocious pass rush.
No, not at all.
And he caught me off guard when he said, we had 40 sacks last year.
Really? I don't remember many of those.
I don't remember.
I really don't. And
But he caught me. I mean, I didn't have it in front of me to dispute it, but
right.
I still don't think we had a ferocious, tenacious pass rush.
I don't remember when this team was going 1-11. A lot of times, quarterbacks after games looking like they had gotten beat up. You know what I'm saying? Like I'll use an example, like the Brett Favre, New Orleans game in the NFC Championship game, where when he got interviewed after the game, he looked like he had just gone 12 rounds with Ali in his prime. I don't think I remember many games against quarterbacks like Jay Cutler in Chicago, Roethlisberger the first time in Pittsburgh, Palmer in Cincinnati. I don't remember a lot of guys, they look like they had a Sunday stroll in the park.
Right.
And what I mean by that, of course, is that their offensive line did a nice job protecting them, and the Browns did not do an effective job getting to the quarterback. I looked at Derek Anderson and Brady Quinn being on the ground and running around a lot more than I did opposing quarterbacks. So I would have to dispute that as well with Eric. I think that's a farce of a statement. Okay, what? Did you got a couple sacks against guys like David Garrard, and I don't even remember who coached or quarterbacked the Oakland game by at that point, Jamarcus Russell or Brad Gradkowski or whoever it was. I mean, you won 4 games against 3 teams that were disinterested and 1 team that didn't show up in Pittsburgh. That to me is the end of the season, and that's why still, unfortunately, right now I think this is a 5-7 win team. I just don't see. And things would have to fall in place, of course, for this team to win 9 or 10 games. A lot of things. But to me, if the ball bounces their way, they're an 8-win team.
What's going to happen with the authorities with Rodgers or league suspension?
I think if he looks at a suspension, he's looking at 2 to 3 games. I think based on what they did to Roethlisberger in Pittsburgh, he's only going to end up serving 4 games. I think he's doing all the stuff off the field that he needs to do with the counseling and everything like that. So I think for Sean Rodgers, I think it's a situation where, he admitted his mistake. He'll serve some probation. He'll do, some community service and all that stuff. I think if he's suspended more than 3 games, I'd be surprised. The league as a whole right now, and Roger Goodell, I think, has done a tremendous job of laying the law down on the real guys that need to be dealt with. I think this Vince Young thing over the weekend in a strip club in Texas is a prime example of a guy who's had trouble before. I think suspending Roethlisberger like that was perfect because, again, he's had trouble before. Sean Rodgers, we may know him as a guy who doesn't necessarily come across like the most, he's had some, maybe a couple things you've heard about him in the public or being out of clubs or whatever. That's fine. But he's never gotten in trouble. And I think that's one thing that if you're Sean Rodgers, you have going for you. And if you're the Browns, you have that going for you. So if he gets suspended a game or 2, that's probably going to be it. I think he made a bad mistake. I think he needs it. Just like a lot of these guys, Bruce, they need to be intelligent enough to realize that when you're going in through an airport, you can't do the thing. You're not above the law. We've talked about this. Sometimes these guys think that they are and they're not. And I think in his case, he'll serve his time, he'll serve his punishment, and that'll be it. I don't think it's going to be an ongoing issue.
If you didn't know who Matt Loede was before the interview, now you do. We're going to have you back. Thanks, partner.
Thank
Good
you.
job.
Appreciate it, Bruce.
All right, buddy. We'll be back as we wind down Indians baseball tonight right here on STO. Interleague play with the Tribe, the New York Mets, trying to even up the series.